Earlier tonight, one of Britain's most prestigious universities, the London School of Economics, well, they hosted the launch of a new book that claims Hamas is misunderstood. The Israeli ambassador called on the university to cancel the launch of Understanding Hamas and Why That Matters, that's the name of the book, but LSE, they refused, claiming it was defending free speech. Pro-Palestine protesters clashed with Israeli counter-protesters earlier tonight, and I went along to find out why anybody would be willing to support a proscribed terrorist group.
Ben Leo covering for Patrick Christie's tonight. I'm down here at the London School of Economics in central London, where they're due to be hosting a book event titled Understanding Hamas and Why That Matters. Hamas, of course, a proscribed terrorist organisation in the UK. There's a pro-Palestinian contingent here. There's a pro-Israeli contingent standing off against each other. Guys, do you fancy a chat on GBNews? No. Why are you blocking me off? Very strange. Why are you protesting? You don't want to talk? Why are you supporting a proscribed terrorist organisation? Can you say? Anyone fancy a chat? You're all standing on the street protesting. Anyone wants to have an open discussion?
He's just media.
Why are you supporting a proscribed terrorist organisation and covering your face? It's very interesting, isn't it? They come to the streets of central London, they protest, they wave flags, and yet they mask their faces, they try and cover the camera up with flags and banners, and they're all about censorship. Surely if you believe in a cause so much and you're so passionate about it, you wouldn't mind your identity being exposed for the world to see. Max from Stop the Hate, one of the organisers of this counter-protest. Why are all that lot over there covering their faces, draping flags and banners over our camera? Why don't they want to ID themselves?
The truth is they know that they support a proscribed terrorist organisation and they don't have the conviction of their beliefs to put their face to it. The fact that they want to hide their faces shows that they lack the conviction of their beliefs, and it shows they know their views are illegal.
What do you make of the fact that LSE, one of the most prestigious universities in the country, is holding an event for a book that wants people to understand Hamas and, I guess, garner sympathy for Hamas?
I think it's shameful, and it shows the decline of universities. Since October 7th, universities have seen an outbreak of anti-Semitism, an outbreak of terrorist support, and a lot of these protests are just cover for anti-Semitism and just general malaise on the universities. And it's shameful that an institution would try and defend a terrorist organisation that committed the biggest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust.
My friend, you're in the Palestine section. You up for a quick chat? Just want to know why you support a proscribed terrorist organisation. You've got 2 minutes. Do you think October the 7th was justified resistance? The book that they're meeting for tonight is called Understanding Hamas and Why That Matters. They describe the slaughter of October the 7th as resistance. What's your take on that? So the book is called Understanding Hamas and Why That Matters. What should people understand about Hamas?
I'll explain if you want to listen. Yeah. Okay. And I want to talk to him. I'm okay.
Why don't your friends want to
No, you listen to me or I won't talk to you.
I'm asking why your friends are trying to drag you away.
I want to talk to you. If you want to listen, you listen. If you don't, I'll shut up.
I'm listening to you.
Okay, thank you. In the 1791 slave rebellion in Haiti, 7,000 of the French imperialists were killed in the village. No, you listen, or shut up.
With respect, I don't want a history lesson. I'm just asking why.
I'm giving you a history lesson.
I'm asking why Hamas.
All right, well, you can go away.
All right, okay.
I'm joined now by Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and the former chairman of the Conservative Party, Sir Jake Berry. Carol, what do you make of all those shenanigans?
You know, the organisation stuff, you know, you're right. You know, the people supporting Hamas there, it's a grotesque platform for Hamas supporters. You know, these are the monsters who bury women and children alive. They rape women in the streets. They torture and starve men to death. This is what Hamas does, and yet there is support for them out there. I just don't get it. However, we're talking about the LSE as well. They're having this kind of this discussion on Hamas because they're misunderstood. They think that Hamas is misunderstood. You know, the university said tonight that it's all, what their quote was, it's free speech and freedom of expression underpins everything that we do. That's a lie. It's a total lie. They are one of the biggest no platformers of universities in this country.
Do you think that event should be cancelled tonight?
I think that the LSE thing should have been cancelled, yes. Or unless they allowed someone from Israel there to talk. But my point was, in 2021, they deplatformed the Israeli ambassador in this country, and she's the one who asked for the debate and the LSE to be cancelled. They deplatformed her. There are two debate groups in the LSE, two Palestinian groups, and they campaigned and they abused, they threatened, this was the organisers of the debate. They were threatening them. You should not be threatened for who you choose to listen to or what you think. And these are kids at university who are supposed to be expanding their mind, and yet they're not.
OK.
They think one thing, and that's it.
Well, on that point, Benjamin Butterworth, plain devil's advocate, are a lot of those protesters down there, they all look quite young. Are they perhaps a bit naive? Are they brainwashed? Are they just concerned for what's going on in this conflict with Gaza because children are dying, women are dying? Are they all Hamas sympathisers and supporters?
Well, first of all, there was a terrible inaccuracy in your report. The LSE is the best university in London.
Are you a former alumni, are you?
Yeah.
I've spent 4 years at the London School of Economics.
Well, that explains a lot, doesn't it?
So that explains my incredible mind. But look, I suspect a lot of those protesters are not students at the LSE and have no link to it. Often they're whipped up to turn up at these events, regardless of where they are. Now, I'm very sad to hear that they've deplatformed the Israeli ambassador. I didn't know that. She has spoken on other occasions. And, one of the things, as a former LSE student, it's the most international university. It has about 70% overseas students, and we're talking very high-quality people. And so it comes under a lot.
Do you call those people high quality there?
Well, I don't know them, but
it comes under.
But I presume the students were inside, not outside. I think the point Benjamin makes is this is rent-a-mob, isn't it? Outside.
So who's funding them, Jake? Oh, sorry, Ben. Finish
I was
going
to say it's that the LSE, because it's such a good university and has lots of students from around the world, it often comes under pressure from foreign governments. For example, they have a globe on campus, and they put Taiwan in a different colour to China. The Chinese government threatened the LSE to change the colour and they refused. So I think the LSE has form on standing up to governments.
But it's one of the biggest defenders of the cancel culture.
I don't think that's fair.
But that is completely fair. They have a history of it. There was a debate last year about the NHS. They deplatformed that.
I don't know if that would be the University or the Students' Union.
It was.
Okay.
But can I just say...
Yep.
I think Hamas are terrorists. You don't need a book to understand them. We know that from their actions. But I'm innately uncomfortable at the idea of a government or an embassy telling an academic institution what they can and can't platform. And I think it would be a better answer to have a critical voice on the panel than cancel.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. But, Benjamin, do you think LGBTQ students at the LSE should feel comfortable going into university when they've given a platform to an organisation, leaving aside the Israel and the terrorist organisation, they've given a platform to an organisation that calls for the murder of gay people.
Well, of course.
Do you think that's appropriate in a British university?
Well, the great irony is that I suspect the people at this event
but leaving the irony aside, is it appropriate that a university gives a platform to an organisation that, as well as the extermination of the Jewish people and the murder of Jews, but also wants to see all gay people murdered as well?
I will say it is a book. They are not directly platforming Hamas in this situation. But as far as I understand, I've seen some of the book online. It is trying to understand the reasoning behind Hamas.
But why do they want it? There is no reasoning when you rape and murder women and children. There is no reasoning behind that.
So are these kids misled then? Are these protesters?
Yeah, they're basically the people protesting. They're UIs. They're useful idiots. They're people who've seen the glamorisation of going to a protest, and they've been washed along with it. Most of them won't be, terrorist supporters who thought, isn't it really good that on October the 7th load of Jews were murdered?
Their own student union recently put out a statement. It said, "We believe in a no-platform policy for those who discuss ideas that promote harmful ideologies." What the hell does Hamas do?
Well, Hamas
harmful ideologies.
It does. It has in its founding charter the extermination of the Jewish people, but it also has, if you see in Gaza, it has the extermination of gay people. I don't think it should be given glorified in any way. What I would say is I'm actually quite pleased that this event went ahead, because universities should be open for free speech and debate. During the 1980s and 90s, a decade Carol and I, both of us will remember, there were lots of universities who used to have debates about the IRA when they were actively engaged in a terrorism campaign here in England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland.
University isn't equal in what it does.
Well, that is a problem.
Platforms people. Hell, they deplatformed Amber Rudd a few years ago when she was Home Secretary.
Hang on, can I just...
But they want to discuss Hamas.
But can I just point out, that's the Students' Union, the democratic body, whereas this is the university itself. So
why don't they step in then and say something?
Things.
They could easily step in and say,
I don't...
Well, fine, but I would
deplatform people that you just don't agree with, and that's what they do.
Look, Hamas are terrorists. Hamas is terrorists,
yes.
I suppose is grammatically correct. Right, there's no doubt about that, OK? It's deplorable, it's disgusting.
There is some
But, you know, the last government introduced a piece of legislation to ban deplatforming. So if you agree with that when it comes to, say, you know, TERFs, as it's called, if you think they should have a platform, fine,
I don't think this event should have been cancelled.
Well, then you can't think this should be cancelled. And I'm afraid, I think we're better for exposing these people and their warped logic
let me
understanding that than not understanding.
I don't think this event should have been cancelled because I believe in free speech and I'm what they call a free speech absolutist, no matter how vile or threatening the rhetoric. However, what shocks me, and I say there is some doubt about whether Hamas are terrorists, because I went to... Where was I this week?
What?
I went to High Wycombe and went to a Palestine solidarity campaign, and I asked a lot of the organisers, I played the clip on my show at the weekend, I said, should Hamas remain a proscribed terrorist organisation? And the amount of people who are happy to stand in the street with their faces open and talk to me and say, no, they shouldn't. There's reasoning behind their massacre on October the 7th. These people, and the type of people that I've visited tonight, they believe that Hamas has a just cause, and for me, that's even more reasonable.
But exactly,
the shocking.
But by having those debates in universities, you can call out the warped ideology that makes people say that October the 7th was a justified murder of the Jewish people. It absolutely wasn't. It was an appalling act of terrorism. But if we're ever going to win the hearts and minds of people who have those very warped and, in some cases, very anti-Semitic views, the best way is to expose them to sunlight. It is the best disinfectant.
Do you know the reason for the no platforming policy? It was introduced in 1974, and it was to stop racist and fascist speeches. It was to stop that being normalised. And so it had a good intention in the beginning. It was to stop racism and fascism and extremism. But now this is what they're doing tonight. They're trying to rationalise and justify this form of extremism.
Yeah. What's shocking for me isn't the fact that the event's been allowed to go ahead. As I said, I think it should have. What's shocking is the amount of support for the theory or the idea that there's justification behind Hamas. I mean, for me, that's concerning. And again,
in a way, it proves that we do misunderstand Hamas, because clearly there are people that don't understand that they're terrorists and rapists.
Yeah, well, someone's missing the point. I don't think it's us.
Even there are rules in war, and you don't bury children alive, and you don't bury women alive in a war. That's not what happens, and yet Hamas does that.
Yeah, even the Foreign Secretary of Saudi Arabia has condemned Hamas.
All right.
So
let me read a statement from the London School of Economics. A spokesman said, free speech and freedom of expression underpins everything we do at LSE. Students, staff and visitors are strongly encouraged to discuss and debate the most pressing issues around the world. We host an enormous number of events each year covering a wide range of viewpoints and positions. We have clear policies in place to ensure the facilitation of debates in these events and enable all members of our community to refute ideas lawfully and to protect individuals' rights to freedom of expression within the law. This is formalised in our Code of Practice on Free Speech and in our Ethics Code. And I'll say again, just as a final point, I don't understand how people can get the time and energy to go to these events, these gatherings. They bring their placards and their banners and they text their mates and they go out into London. You know, it's a cold night tonight, I say again. And yet they don't want to be ID'd. They don't want a conversation. They just want to censor.
Cowards.
They're cowards.
Yeah.
They're cowards. Right.